Do you know about the African king who refused to remove his crown in front of the then British monarch, Queen Elizabeth? His name was King Atta Ame Oboni, a king of the Igala tribe of Nigeria. When other kings removed their crowns at the order of the Queen at a conference in Kaduna, King Atta refused to do so even when this move could have ended his life. Why did the king refuse to honor the British monarch in such a way? Well, the short and easy answer is that it is taboo for the king to do so. Among the Igala people of Nigeria, a king must never be seen removing his crown in public, and it was also an abomination for the king to give a handshake to a woman. The gods forbid it, and as African kingship is mostly spiritual rather than political, the king refused to give the Queen of England a handshake and to take off his crown. He stood his ground against these foreign impostors and showed them the might of his kingdom. What did he do? History states that at the meeting, other kings who had removed their crowns and others with Uncle Tomish behavior, who wanted to please the British Queen, began to pressure King Atta to take off his crown. He had no support from his African brothers who understood his culture and why he shouldn't take off his crown. The British monarch, Queen Elizabeth III, was angry at the gut of this king. She felt her power had been undermined and sent his soldiers to seize him. They did seize the king, and for many who had been in that position, they know what comes next. The British monarchy hated it when African leaders defiled their orders, and to deter them from these acts, they mostly captured, brutally beat up a king in front of his people, and then banished them to a faraway land where he probably lived the rest of his life. They install a new king in the kingdom who does their bidding and continues to rule by proxy. King Atta Ame knows that the moment he said no to removing his crown in front of the queen, his life is over. But tradition is tradition, and as the king of his land, he has to uphold his tradition. King Atta was bound by the British soldiers in front of the Queen of England, and then he chose to show them just how powerful African kings are. He told them he would remove his crown, and he did. But something else happened that shook the Queen and kept R from meeting Nigerian royalties for a while. What happened? King Atta removed his crown, and suddenly from his crown, a large swarm of bees like a tornado burst through his crown and enveloped the room. The room burst into chaos. These bees began a stinging frenzy, stinging both kings and soldiers who were at the meeting. Immediately, the soldiers carried the queen out of the meeting as she wailed in fear and agony. Even other African kings and their soldiers and advisors ran out of the auditorium, but as they ran out, King Atta stood there surrounded by bees, just silently staring at the chaos all around. They all ran out and watched as the bees flew out and flew away. The British Queen had been taken away, and so most of the kings in attendance had been severely stung by the bees. After the chaos died down, the soldiers of the African kings went back in to retrieve the rogue king since everyone saw him standing there without moving. It turned out that he didn't exit through the doors, he only stood there smiling to himself. The king was handcuffed by British soldiers and was led out of the auditorium when all of a sudden his handcuffs fell off. King Atta Ame Oboni mysteriously disappeared from the auditorium, leaving both British soldiers and African dignitaries astonished. This story is like no other. It showed just how resilient African kings were back in the day. Even those that were not a top-tier kingdom had pride in their culture and dignity.